Olivia Winter. I am a yoga teacher and I'm also an exercise and wellness major. I'm making these videos, one for a class and two to help you guys to, when you go to your first yoga class, to know some of the poses and what you should be looking for in them, like just getting confidence on what you should do when you first go to a class. I stutter a little bit when I'm nervous and I don't know what to say, so sorry about that. Also, you might see one of two cats. This one here is Cholula and she might be joining us today, and then another one is named Chicharon. You probably won't ever see her, she's very shy. But yeah, I just wanted to create these videos so that you could feel more comfortable either starting a yoga video, like that's where I got my start in yoga, was Yoga with Adrienne. We all love her. And I just want to give basics because I feel like a lot of yoga classes, they just get right into it and they see the names of it and you can look at them and see what it is. But as someone who has a yoga background and has been taught on what to look for, I thought that this might be helpful. So for the first video, we're only going to focus on 3 things and then run through one of the basics from like a traditional yoga class that you would be doing, and through any yoga class would be Sun Salutation A is what it's called. But for the first 3 basics that we're going to focus on is 1, our breath. That is the main part of all of yoga. We call it pranayama, and it's preparation of like the mind and the body for meditation. It gives you something to focus on through your practice. So you'll be going through what we call asanas, or those are the poses we'll be doing, and you're gonna be focusing on your breath. So when you go into a pose, you either inhale or exhale, and when you leave a pose, you'll inhale or exhale. And it just helps you focus on your body and be in tune to your breath body and your physical body. Now to start any of this, and I'll say this a lot throughout here, is focus on what you feel. If you feel discomfort, if you feel like you're running out of breath, just be mindful of how you feel and be willing to make changes or use props for help. That's why we have them. They don't mean that you're bad at anything. They're just there to help you to keep from injuring yourself and to allow you to keep doing this practice. Yoga has a lot of strengthening through isometric exercise, which is just holding the exercise, and a lot of stretching. So it can be not very comfortable. There can be a lot of discomfort, and that's okay. There's gonna be some discomfort just like with any exercise form, but you don't wanna hurt yourself. So be aware of your body. And I always found when I start this that being aware of my body here and my breath here, I was able to translate it into my life and the foods I was eating and the schedule I had, breathing through any other exercises. And so again, with the breath, I just also want to say, when you're breathing, what we want to do is breathe through our nose. Breathe through our nose, and if we need to, out through our mouth. Now, the main point I want you to get is to breathe. Breathing is good. Do not hold your breath. Yoga is all about breathing. But as I've learned through my classes in school, is breathing through your nose helps you oxygenate your blood better and get it through your body and use that oxygen. It's just a much quicker way for your body to get it through your nose and into your lungs. So as I'm breath breathing here, just keep that in mind. And if you need to take things slower, if you need to take more breaths for each pose, please feel free to do so. Now we're going to enter into the physical practice of yoga. We talked about pranayama and the breath, bringing the breath and the body together. And now we're talking about asanas, which does the same thing, except it's physically doing the poses with the breath. So they're called asanas. And the first 2 that we will be focusing on is child's pose and down dog. Now the 2, I wanted to choose those 2 because any class you go into, if you feel overwhelmed, if the poses seem too hard, go ahead and take either one of these poses. Child's pose or down dog, they're great rest poses just to get caught up. And if anything else, if you just go between down dog and child's pose, you're gonna get a great workout anyways. Okay, so for child's pose, we're gonna start You can start kneeling. This is a kneeling pose. And what you're gonna do, you can be on your hands and knees if you need to. I'll scoot up down on my mat. You're gonna bring your big toes together. So your big toes come together, your feet go wide, and as you're coming down, you're gonna widen your knees. So we can do it hips width apart. You can take a smaller, do that. You can take a smaller knee stance as well. But if you have any like hip discomfort or anything in your back, a wider stance is always better. So we're gonna think about lowering, taking our hip bones to our heels. Our toes stay together and our heels open up along with our knees. And then we will fold forward. So you can fold forward. You're gonna be trying to straighten your back and put your belly in between your legs. So as you're going forward, you can either hold the pose with your hands out straight, or you can put them behind you if you feel a lot of shoulder tension. Now what I like to do when I go into child's pose is to allow my forehead, or even where my hairline is on my head, to touch the mat. And you won't be able to hear me very well as I go down, but I'm just going to demonstrate that for you. And then this is what it looked like with your hands behind your back. When you're in this pose, you just want to breathe. Relax your face and your neck. Bring your shoulders away from your ears. Like I said, if you have shoulder tension, go ahead and put your hands behind you, or even sometimes I like to put it under my forehead. Now I'm going to show you what you could do with some props. Props that you can use to help make this pose a little bit more comfortable are blocks, a towel, a blanket, anything that you need. If you need more padding under your shins, you can fold your mat in half and just give you a little bit more squish for your shins as you're leaning forward, if that hurts you there. Or you can do it just for under your knees or just over the tops of your feet. Sometimes that can be painful, those are really bony. Another thing you can do is if you have a lot of pressure or stress in your knees and it hurts, you can take a towel and fold it in half here, or fold it in quarters, and put it behind your knees, and that'll just help open up your knees a little bit and give some more space for you to lean forward. Another thing you can do, if your bum does not touch your heels, you can take a block and you can put it between your feet here and use it to rest on. You just want it to be comfortable as you're coming down. And you can also use a block for your head. So your hands can go forward and your head on the block. If you feel like you need more support in your chest, you can do double here. Take the block in between your knees, lay your chest on it, and then you can lay your head on the other block. Like I said, with any pose, feel free to make it yours. Find movement. Add any props that you need. Something that I like to do when I am in child's pose, get a little movement. You can move your hips a little, sink them in. You can open your knees wider, or sometimes you can put your knees together, and that gives you some more support for your chest. And just be in the fetal position. Another good way I like to do is to warm up my shoulders. So my fingers are forward, I'll scoot back here, and I'm keeping my arms active. So I'm rotating my shoulders down and back. It's also a good way to practice with your hands, getting used to putting some pressure in your wrists and in your fingers. Now for hand placement, as we go into downward dog, I want you to keep in mind how your hands are facing. Sometimes we like to turn them in like this, like we're gonna do a push-up. But what I want you to try is lining them so that your fingers, your pointer fingers point straight. So it might look like you're turning them out, but try and put your pointer fingers forward on your mat. This also goes for if you have any tightness in your shoulders. So what you want to do if you feel even more tightness is rotate them out even more. Another thing with downward dog as we go in, if you are hypermobile in any of your joints, be aware. Now, child's pose is more of a relaxing pose and resting pose, and downward dog is strengthening and stretching. So downward dog, we're going to be strengthening our quads and our arms and our shoulders, and we'll be stretching our back and our hamstrings. It'll also strengthen your wrists because you're going to be putting more pressure. Downward dog is considered an inversion. So if you have any high blood pressure, you want to make sure that you're breathing, and just make sure to watch that. You don't want it to get too high. Now, as we're going into downward dog, we're going to start usually on our hands and knees. Take a look at your hands. Make sure your pointed fingers are pointing forward. We're going to turn under our toes and see that our feet are about hips width distance apart. Now we're going to exhale, and as we do, we're going to lift our knees off the mat and press our sit bones to the sky. Okay? So we're going to go. Now you can make this pose as wide on the mat as you need. Again, shoulder pain, take the stance wider. Anything that you need, just make adjustments. Now, when I'm in downward dog, my thoughts are, starting from my hands, is pressing my fingers into the ground, pressing every knuckle into the ground, really gripping it. Then with our arms, instead of pushing our elbows out, we're going to draw them in and try to create this line from our wrist to our shoulder of just strength. And as we do this, we're going to twist the ground with our hands. And we're going to pull our shoulders back and down. So you might be like this. We just want to loosen it up. Now for the back half of our body, we want our spine from our neck to our tailbone to be straight. We want our sit bones to be facing towards the ceiling. Now, this might be really hard. You might have really tight hamstrings. I have tight hamstrings today. I've been training for a half marathon, which has been really fun. But it's just good to keep in mind, although we want our heels to be heavy and eventually touch the ground, we can keep as much of a bend in a knee as we need to. So don't overstretch your hamstrings. You don't want to hurt them, but keep a bend in your knee, and you can work it out. Back, you can pedal your legs like a bicycle, and I'll show you what I am speaking of. So here I am in my downward dog, and my goal is just to get my tailbone as much to face the ceiling as possible, all while keeping my arms straight and strengthened. I'm just pedaling out my legs, getting my hamstrings used to the stretch, my heels on the ground. And this is what we want to look like. We want our head between our ears, between our arms, our butt facing high. And a good thought to keep in mind is once you've done all of those things and you don't know if you're in the right position, think about, one, you don't want to push your head through your arms too much, but think about bringing your chest to your thighs. So as you become more and more flexible doing this pose, you could go from having a really wide pose, taking up the whole mat, to maybe walk your feet forward. Still pedaling, still finding that movement, and pressing our tailbone up. Now, when I build my legs in downward dog, I'm also activating my knees, because I want to keep them safe. I don't want to lock them out, but what I'm going to do is tighten my quads, and that's going to keep those active and protect my knees. If you haven't done very many downward dogs or inversions, your wrists might be sore. So if they ever start to hurt doing it, make sure you take a break. You can move them around, but don't overwork them. You don't want to hurt them. It's a lot more weight than your wrists may be used to having. Now, before I finish today, I just want to leave you with the Sanskrit names for both of these poses. If you ever go to a traditional like Ashtanga yoga, they'll be using more of the Sanskrit words than the English words. So for child's pose, it's going to be Balasana. So if they say move into Balasana, you know that it's going to be child's pose. And for downward facing dog, it's going to be Adho Mukha Savasana. So we all know about Shavasana. So Savasana, Adho Mukha Savasana. That's what it's going to be downward dog. So just keep an ear out for those if you ever go to traditional class or watch a traditional video. That's going to be the movement that they're going to be wanting you to do. Also keep in mind, again, your breathing. I didn't talk too much about breathing with either of them, but as you move into the pose, you're going to be exhaling. And then you're going to inhale as you're making your adjustments, and then exhale as you move it out of the movement. You really just want to find that mixture of breath for your body and what makes you feel more comfortable. Maybe you take multiple breaths, maybe you take one big one. It's all about keeping that breath in mind and keeping an even, deep breath. So thank you for joining me today. I hope that you learned something new, and I hope while doing this series that I can become a better teacher, and maybe I'll have to repeat this another day when I have my words, because right now I just seem to be losing them. So yes, thank you for joining me.